Hello again, Proteanview. I often wonder at what point we'll all get past the arguments between atheists about who is favoring what religion over another. It dominates many conversations that would be much more productive on other subjects, perhaps, but on the other hand, I believe that there are many well-known YouTubers that are contributing to this perception, so I don't think it should go unanswered. I suppose I'm now in a small way contributing to the problem by making this video, but maybe I can make this video a small part of the solution, too. There were two videos I saw on the subject over the weekend. One was PatCondell telling people to stop sending him messages about how Jews run the world, and the other was your response to him trying to say that maybe he shouldn't be so quick to dismiss them.
Let's blame the Jews, or so says PatCondell, as he pokes fun at those who seem to blame Jews for everything. And in the video he's discussing anti-Semitism, folks who blame Jews for everything, and of course sometimes PatCondell sounds like he blames Muslims for everything. I'm not sure why one is better or worse than the other. But PatCondell is an atheist, and even though he's an atheist, he winds up sounding sort of like an advocate for Jews in the Jewish state.
Now, I've been critical of Pat about his political call to arms against Muslims' stealth jihad, as you have as well, but on the subject of his latest video, I completely feel his pain, because the more subscribers I get, the more rambling 10-page messages I get about how Jews are running the world, and I need to help them get the word out. I often will look at their channel page to see if they have anything coherent to say, but it's usually the stereotypical collection of Hitler quotes and videos about racial purity and Holocaust denial. Pat's thoughts were fairly similar to mine on this subject, though he made it a bit more cut and dried than I would have. I would also add that the deference that many of our Christian conservative politicians give to them is theological, and they would be big supporters of Israel even if your arch-nemesis AIPAC didn't give them a dime. And besides, I know Israel isn't the only country that lobbies our government. Meanwhile, let's find a way to reduce the influence of money in politics for all special interests. I'm pretty sure you and I agree on that.
Condell sort of uses the lack of Jews, or the small number of Jews, to negate any stereotypes that Jews run or control anything. Now, I want to point out first that you can easily say, you know, Muslims control this, or whites control this, or Christians control this, but the minute you say Jews control or dominate anything, it's anti-Semitic. The minute you say Jews run, dominate, or control anything, it's all of a sudden a conspiracy. But you can say any other group, blacks, whatever, controls, Asians control or dominate anything, science, engineering, basketball, but the minute you say Jews do, it's a conspiracy and you're anti-Semitic.
Well, of course that's the first reaction, Proteanview. People don't say that for basketball or for science because nobody ever predicates those thoughts with, so they can control the world. In the Middle East, dictators blaming Israel for all their problems is a very convenient way for every stripe of klepto-theocracy to take the focus off their rampant corruption and ignorance that fuels their policy failures and seemingly never-ending third-world country status. Of course, Israel has some policies that are a bad idea, quite a few actually, and I've mentioned those before, but with the exception of the Palestinians, most Muslims have no need for a change in policy from Israel or some other influx of cash or other largesse from outside the country to improve their quality of life. They need a change in attitude and leadership, and I'm not going to feed the psyches of those with delusions of repression unless there's evidence to do so. While the Arab Spring is a good start toward that end, that's still a work in progress. Let's see where these countries are a year or two from now before we celebrate too much.
So let's take a look at some of our biggest, most influential banks, like the International Monetary Fund, run by, so far, Jewish Dominique Strauss-Kahn. The World Bank, run by Robert Zoellick, who is Jewish, and prior to that, Paul Wolfowitz, who is Jewish, and prior to that, Paul Wolfensohn, who is Jewish. The biggest Federal Reserve Bank, the United States Federal Reserve Bank, is run by Benjamin Bernanke, who is Jewish, and prior to that, Alan Greenspan, who is Jewish. The most influential private bank, Goldman Sachs, is run by a Jewish person, and of course, Goldman Sachs gave the most money to Barack Obama and got some big bailout money. So we look at the major movie directors in Los Angeles. So many of them are Jewish, and the fact that Jews are such a small percentage of the population sort of makes it stand out even more, the fact that they're running so many of the movies and the banks. Look at some of the magazine editors, whether it's from magazine editors to movies, the things that shape our minds are run by Jews. U.S. News and World Report, Newsweek, and many more. And then, of course, there's the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, one of the most influential lobbies in the United States, and it's a lobby for the betterment of a foreign country.
Yes, I've heard you read similar lists probably a dozen times. Granted, the decisions of some of these people can affect other countries as well, but most of these people mentioned are Americans working for our private industries or our government, so unless you think that these people are purposely subverting our own interests in favor of Israel's, then why are you alarmed at their background? If you aren't alarmed, then why bring it up so often? I'm going to come right out and ask you, do you think that this Jewish influence you talk about so frequently is harming our country? And if so, who are the biggest threats? And do you think these people are purposely subverting American interests in favor of Israeli or Jewish interests? If you can answer these questions frankly, and have some questions for me in return, I'd be happy to answer them as well. It's only fair, right?
Enter Barbara Spector, an American Jew who moved to Sweden and somehow got the Swedish government to back her organization for Jewish learning. Mostly secular Swedish taxpayers are using their money for some foreign Jewish lady comes there for her religious-focused organization. And Barbara claims, and this is a direct quote, multiculturalism must take place, and Jews are going to be at the center of it.
I watched the video, and while I have little doubt that what that lady is doing is useless at best, I'm having a hard time getting terribly spun up about it. Maybe your idea of what multiculturalism consists of is different from mine. Even if it's something terrible, holding her up as speaking the truth about the goals of Judaism is just as much nonsense as me telling my Muslim friends that I'm surprised they didn't mourn bin Laden's death. It doesn't sound like she's speaking for very many people. By the way, did you take a look at the channel page of the guy that posted the video you linked? He has a 9/11 truth video featured, and he has uploaded, among other things, a video about the New World Order and a David Duke video about racial purity. I realize that doesn't automatically discount everything he has to say, but it's pretty much the triumvirate of fail. Maybe now David Duke will finally subscribe to you, though.
Pat supports Israel's right to exist. No one ever says Palestine's right to exist, and it's their land that's being encroached upon. But the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, no country, no state has a right to exist. What gives them the right to exist? They fight to be able to sustain themselves and to exist. There's no such thing as a country having a right to exist. And why would an atheist fight for a country to have a right to exist based on it being Jewish or any other religion? Pat says the Jewish state, quote, needs to exist. For what? No, it doesn't, any more than an Arab or Christian state needs to exist. Why does this alleged atheist have a bias towards a religion?
You're not really advocating for pure might makes right here, are you? No, it doesn't usually work that way anymore, and it shouldn't work that way. I don't care what country it is or what it's based on. When countries are invaded, people die, and if the people in that country were happy with how things are, it would be nice if they were defended, though I think we'd agree that it shouldn't have to always be us. It keeps the wannabe Saddam Husseins of the world from just annexing their neighbors without a second thought. Yes, Israel's situation is sticky, and in hindsight, the creation of that country should have been handled differently. And I certainly think Israel's treatment of the Palestinians has frequently been not okay. And I support a two-state solution, but letting Israel be destroyed if its neighbors are eventually able to do it by force is very much not okay either. Would you really be fine with the United States just watching that happen if it ever came down to that, as you seem to imply? What do you think would happen to the civilians in that situation?
Atheists don't need to hate the religious or even religion, but why does this atheist support a state based on religion? Why does he make excuses for this religion? Why is an atheist an advocate for Judaism or Jews or Israel?
So Proteanview, I guess you and Pat can go back and forth trying to decide who's taking over the world or who's the bigger threat, Jews or Muslims, and I'll just watch and make a video about it from time to time as I've been doing, and each time I make a video I will continue to be accused of being a secret Muslim by Pat's fans or a secret Jew by your fans, but never both at the same time, of course, or be accused of being an advocate for Israel by you yourself, no matter how clearly I articulate my position. It's okay though, I'm very familiar with that game by now. We're subscribed to each other, so I'll keep watching, and I hope you do too. For what it's worth, I think you and Pat are both right on this subject though, in a way. But only when you're criticizing each other's theories.